and improve generic competition. This is huge news, and I commend Eli Lilly. It makes two things very clear. First, capping insulin at $35 is good policy. If Eli Lilly can do it, so should we in Congress, plain and simple. It's been adapted already in red and blue states. Now one of the biggest manufacturers is doing it. So the time has come to get this done in Congress. While I hope other manufacturers follow suit, there's no substitute for locking this down as mandatory and permanent for all Americans. We Democrats as a caucus have been pushing this for over a year. This is a good step forward, a good breakthrough, but we are going to keep pushing until we pass legislation so all insulin by all companies is at $35 for everybody. Okay? All right. Now, on this great report, first I want to thank our great Debbie Stabenow, head of the DPCC. When she gets into an issue, she rolls up her sleeves and she gets into the details, and she uses both the combination of her deep understanding of policy and her outstanding ability and instinct to message, and we get great results. So we're very proud of the DPCC in general and today on this report. And then we have some of our great chairs here, Senator Wyden, the estimable leader of the Finance Committee, Senator Sanders, the estimable leader of the Budget Committee, and Senator Whitehouse. See, I didn't want to get into comparison of adjectives. So once you were estimable, they were all estimable. Estimable Steve Whitehouse, the head of the Budget Committee, all for their tremendous work. All our committees came together and worked hard on this issue. Okay. The last 2 years under the Senate Democratic majority, we reduced the deficit by over $1.7 trillion and invested in economic opportunity for American families throughout the country. To the contrast, House Republicans' first action in this Congress, if you can believe this, was to protect the ultra-wealthy and tax cheats to the tune of $114 billion. And then say to middle-class families and those struggling to get to the middle class, you pay for it. We're giving them the tax breaks, and you're going to pay for it one way or another. Well, if you thought that was enough for these folks, it wasn't. Their fantastical plan, I call it fantastical, to balance the budget in 10 years would decimate the middle class, decimate the wallets of every American family, and undo the progress we've made over the last 2 years. Our report today throws a spotlight on the dangerous, draconian cuts in the Republican budget proposals and their impact throughout the country. Listen to this. Here's what the Republican plan would do. This is what they're supporting. First, they would push millions of Americans off Social Security benefits and raise the retirement age to 70. We have fought and struggled to get Social Security for people. It's harder and harder for them in their retirements to exist, and they want to cut people off Social Security. That is just incredible. Second, they want to privatize Medicare, gutting seniors' benefits and threatening their access to services. And they want to, and if you privatize Medicare, which has always been a public program, you can be sure every single beneficiary of Medicare is going to get cuts, long waits, less quality health care. Disaster. Disaster. They want to privatize Social Security. Hand over all the money that Americans have put in week by week, month by month, and hand it over to Wall Street. Well, we learned what happened in 2008 when that happened. Very bad idea. And they want to cut Medicaid by $2.2 trillion. Let's not forget Medicaid. Medicaid helps so many people. It helps those on disabilities. It helps seniors. But it also helps lots of younger, middle-aged families in their 30s and 40s and 50s who have parents in nursing homes, who have parents have home health care. These families can't afford it. If Medicaid goes away, they lose out, and these families start struggling. So this hurts across the board. And then not to leave out the poor. They want to cut everybody. They want to cut SNAP benefits for families. Who in America in 2023 wants to take food out of the mouth of hungry children? When we know when a kid is hungry, they can't learn, they can't socialize, their whole ability to move forward is cut off. And there's much, much more, as my colleagues will show you. So, yep, Republicans, they love to tout themselves as the party for average Americans, but the proof, my friends, is in this pudding that Debbie Stabenow put together. This pudding shows what they really want to do. So don't believe what they say, believe what they do. When Republicans help tax cheats, when they call for cutting Social Security, when they call for putting Medicare and Medicaid on the chopping block and cut taxes for billionaires and mega corporations, we know who they're for. The ultra-wealthy, the well-connected, the big corporations. We Democrats will continue to look out for those who are struggling to stay in the middle class. We will look out for those struggling to get to the middle class. We will continue to fight for the American people. We'll make sure our veterans are taken care of. And we'll fight for seniors to retire with dignity and benefits they've earned. We are going to fight for middle-class families. And if the past 2 years prove anything, when Democrats fight, we win. Senator Stabenow.
Thank you so much, Senator Schumer. And let me just add my words along with Senator Schumer about insulin. We welcome Eli Lilly's actions. I do want to stress that we would already have a cap of $35 for children and adults as well as people on Medicare if Republicans had joined with us when we passed the $35 cap on Medicare. There was a budget point of order where they could force 60 votes, and then they all voted no. So we would have it for everyone right now if Republicans had joined us. But this is good news. And the bottom line is we need to make sure it's available for everybody, every child, every adult, everybody in our country. It's a drug that's been around for 100 years, and there was no reason that people are paying as much as they're paying right now. Now on to the report. We do have this report and welcome your taking a close look at it. Let me just say that it is based on specific proposals and information that has been put out by Republicans. They're vowing to balance the federal budget in 10 years by two things: embracing proposals from former Trump OMB director Russ Vought, who, according to published reports, has sold many Republicans on proposals to obliterate almost all major forms of federal spending, especially programs that benefit low-income Americans. And then we have the House Republicans have promised to revive not only his 10-year budget plan, but the House Republican Study Committee 2023 budget. So when we're looking at what they've put forward and they said that they're going to do, that's what this report is based on. And the bottom line is it's extreme. These extreme proposals benefit the wealthy and well-connected and hurt American families. So let me just reiterate some of those things. So we look at tens of millions of Americans that will lose their health insurance. We look at Wall Street being able to gamble with Social Security, raising the age on Social Security to 70. And then they also proposed raising the age of Medicare to 70. Now, I've had bills, my colleagues have had bills to lower the age. We've been trying to lower the age to 60 or 55 or lower, or Medicare for all. They want to make it harder to get health care, to get Medicare. You have to wait 5 more years to be able to get Medicare, as well as privatize it. And they would cut $1 trillion. They want to increase health insurance costs by $1,000 a month by taking away the Affordable Care Act tax credits that are there, that have been working so effectively. Take food off the table for more than 40 million people. Eliminate all federal student loan programs that create a pathway for people to be able to get the skills they need to be successful. And they want to slash benefits for veterans. important benefits that our veterans depend on. But the good news is this: the wealthy don't have to worry, because they intend to extend the budget-busting Trump tax giveaways another 10 years, while they are making people wait 5 more years to get Medicare health insurance. Democrats know we can responsibly reduce the deficit without hurting American families, without hurting children or seniors or veterans. And how do we know that? Because we've done it. In the past 2 years under President Biden in Democratic majorities in Congress, we have responsibly cut the federal deficit by over $1.7 trillion, not by hurting families, but by investing in economic opportunity, supporting people, and asking the wealthiest to pay their fair share in taxes. And that is what our Senate majority will continue to do.
Senator Wyden.
Thank you, Mr. Leader, and Senator Stabenow. Good work. And just a quick word about this Eli Lilly decision. More than anything else, it's a policy that represents the beginning of new power for American consumers against Big Pharma. Until our legislation, Big Pharma had never lost once. Not once on a major issue. They protected that restriction against negotiation like it was the Holy Grail. Now you're seeing with the Eli Lilly decision, consumers have moved into the driver's seat. And we're going to see lots more of these kinds of changes. It's high time, and Democrats have launched it. Quick contrast that I want to make for my remarks. It took House Republicans a little longer than 10 minutes to provide massive tax relief to billionaires and the mega wealthy for the next 10 years. That's what they did for folks at the top, who can now go to their accountants and say, look, make sure I paid little or no taxes for years on end. Contrast that with what working families are going to face under their policies. These are the folks who walk an economic tightrope, balancing every day the food bill against the fuel bill and the fuel bill against the rent bill. And the history is pretty clear. We know from 2017, okay, and my colleagues on the Finance Committee remember this. Republicans wanted to unravel Medicaid. They were pushing a plan that would have caused great damage to vulnerable people who had pre-existing conditions. We stopped them, but we know that with their policies, Medicaid as we know it today would not exist. Here's an example that is going to strike today millions of Americans as priority business. Those Medicaid policies the House Republicans are pushing would mean no guarantee for nursing home care in America. I mean, that's what is so essential for millions of older people to know that when they run out of resources, there's going to be help. But no commitment to that guarantee, no health care for your child if you fall on hard times, no lifeline for rural hospitals that count on Medicaid to keep their doors open. If Republicans, have their way, we'd certainly see a big effort to push up the age of Medicare, which means that you're jeopardizing earned benefits. They say they're not going to, to do it. They're going to be able to balance the budget in 10 years and still protect Social Security and Medicare. I can tell you, as chairman of the Finance Committee, we've crunched those numbers. That claim is baloney. The people who are most vulnerable in America are going to be at risk. As Senator Schumer and Senator Stabenow have said, we're going to be on the front lines of opposing it. And what we're seeing, and you saw a little glimpse of it, today, the days when these powerful special interests like pharma and big insurance could call the shots, those days are finally changing. We got a lot more to do, but now we've made big strides. Thank you, Leader.
Senator Sanders.
Thank you, Chuck. And let me just agree with a lot of what Chuck said and what Debbie said and Ron said, and I suspect what Sheldon will say. A word on Eli Lilly. I think, as Ron just indicated, the American people are sick and tired of being treated like chumps and paying by far the highest prices in the world for prescription drugs. I recall a couple of years ago, I went from Detroit, Michigan with a busload of people, Debbie, to Windsor, Ontario. It's about an hour trip, I think. And the people there who are diabetics were able to purchase insulin products for 1/10 the price than they were paying in Michigan or the United States of America. The American people are saying at a time when pharmaceutical profits are soaring, we're not going to continue to pay the highest prices in the world. So what Ron said is right. Now is the time for the American people to come together. I look forward to working with Ron and Chuck and others to tell the entire pharmaceutical industry, stop ripping off the American people. Insulin is a good start. We now have Eli Lilly lowering prices. The other two producers of insulin are going to lower their prices. We need legislation to make sure that that is enforced by law, but it is not just insulin. We're going to take on the industry and stop their outrageous greed. Second of all, we live in a moment in history where we have more income and wealth inequality than any time ever. Billionaire class is doing phenomenally well. Middle class is shrinking. You got millions and millions of people struggling to put food on the table. And our Republican colleagues come along and they say, well, the rich are getting richer. What do you think we should be doing? Why not? Let's give them massive tax breaks. Elderly people are struggling. Half of the older workers in America have nothing saved for retirement. Well, what should we do to them? Hey, I got a great idea. Why don't we cut Social Security? We're the only major country on earth not to guarantee health care to every man, woman, and child is a human right. 85 million are uninsured or underinsured. Well, how do we deal with the health care crisis? I got another brilliant idea. Let's cut Medicare. Let's cut Medicaid. So on all of these issues, the Republican proposal is moving us in exactly the wrong direction. The time now is to stand up to the people who have the wealth and the power and represent the needs of the working class and middle class, not the opposite. And I look forward to working with my colleagues to do just that.
Last of the estimables, White House.
Well, we're here because Republicans have backed themselves into a corner. They want to extend the Trump tax cuts for the wealthy and the well-connected and the biggest corporations. They won't cut defense spending. They continue to talk about cutting Social Security and Medicare, even after booing the president for pointing out that they've said they want to cut Social Security and Medicare. And they're holding hostage the full faith and credit of the federal government while they demand concessions in secret. They won't say what they want for their extremist agenda. Their solution to having backed themselves into this corner, incantation. They're relying on a new magic budget word. That word is woke. The House Budget Chairman says his budget will be modeled after a draft budget put together by Trump's budget director, Russ Vought, which uses the phrase woke 77 times. I think the previous record for the use of the term woke in budgets is 0 always. Call everything woke and then try to cut its funding seems to be the strategy. Housing, woke, chop it in half. Public schools and job training, woke, slash it. Auditing tax cheats, woke, let's not do that. Fighting climate change, woke, none of that. Healthy food for kids and families, woke, cut it. Medicaid, health insurance, heating assistance, cut, cut, cut. From behind this new catchphrase, Republicans want workers and families to line up behind the tax cheaters, behind the polluters, behind the campaign donors, behind the well-connected and the well-off whom they serve. Well, their problem is you can say woke for a while, but then people will notice that they no longer have disability benefits, or that they can't afford their prescription drugs, or that huge corporations are paying nothing in taxes. The woke screen is a smoke screen, and people need to see through it.
Say that again, Sheldon?
The woke screen is a smoke screen, and Americans need to see through it to what Republicans are really trying to do.
Or did you just come up with that?
All right.
Questions on this subject? Anyone want to know about the woke screen? Sheldon.
smoke screen.
Given all this discussion among House Republicans, do Senate Democrats plan to do their own fiscal 2024 budget resolutions?
Well, look, you're going to see President Biden's budget on the 9th, and we'll go from there.
Senator Schumer, do you think a deficit reduction package is needed this Congress? And if there is one, should it revisit the Trump 2017 tax cuts? To what extent should they include?
Well, let me ask both. First, we Democrats have already walked that walk. In the IRA, that was the first major bill that reduced the deficit by $300 billion. In the last year, with the Biden administration, we've reduced the deficit by more than in the Trump years. And so we believe in deficit reduction, believe we can do that and still preserve the values for the middle class and those struggling to get to the middle class. Certainly, I think there's close to unanimity, if not unanimity, in our caucus that the Trump tax cuts were extremely bad for the country. They were bad for the deficit. They were also bad in terms of making even more regressive the income imbalance in the country, where the very rich are doing better and the poor and the middle class are doing worse, making it harder for those folks to live, making it a lot easier for wealthy people to live. There are a whole lot of reasons to undo the Trump tax cuts. Yes?
Leader McConnell yesterday made it clear he wants to see robust increases in defense spending, and went on about that for a while, despite some in his party who said they would look at cuts for defense. What is the Democratic position on this, in particular, also when it comes down to parity?
Yes. Well, you answered you are very prescient. You answered the second comment with the first. Democrats have always believed in parity. There are some in our caucus who are for increasing defense spending, some not, but there's a virtual unanimity that if we're going to raise defense spending, which has happened in the last few budgets, that we raise domestic spending an equal amount, because we think, at least an equal amount, because we think those things are so important to the security of this country, the economic security, the political security, but even the national security. Last one.
On the topic of Social Security and Medicare, while we hear you about past Republican proposals, the Republican Study Committee, the fact is that if nothing happens, Social Security and Medicare recipients will see cuts if there's no change. How is this not a box on both houses, and how do you all plan to deal with that?
We have lots of different proposals, some of them by people here, that would make sure that Social Security is well funded, but not by taking it out on the back of Social Security recipients.
Will we see a plan and a vote this session?
Well, we'll have to wait and see. We certainly, let's wait for the president's budget. Let's show I think he may have some proposals on Social Security, and we'll go from there. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everyone. Jeff.